Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the show. This episode is brought to you by The Wellness Paradigm, a holistic health coaching company shifting the way that women understand and heal their bodies. Through bioenergetic testing, functional lab testing, and functional nutrition, we uncover what traditional approaches often overlook. So you can stop guessing, start healing, and finally feel like yourself again. No more one size fits all protocols, just real answers, deep rooted healing, and the clarity and confidence you deserve to feel incredible. It's time to shift the paradigm of women's health. Now, on to our show. And good morning, Patrick.
Hey, good morning. How are you?
I am great, and I'm excited you're here because I think this is going to be a really fascinating conversation. And Patrick, you call yourself a neuroplastician, right? Um,
Yep.
and he helps people rewrite memories using a process called memory reconsolidation. And we will get into what this actually means and how he helps do this to clients. But I would love a little introduction on who you are, Patrick, and how you even got started in this line of work.
Yeah. If you were to speak to anyone that's in the mental health field, most of them would say they got into it because they needed it.
Yeah.
And uh, I, I'm no exception. When I was a young man, I witnessed a murder-suicide that kind of gave me severe PTSD for a long time. And it wasn't until I was a father that I realized, oh, my behavior is impacting other people's lives. I need to fix this.
Hmm.
So I started going to talk therapy, but talk therapy didn't do anything for me other than make me worse. And sometimes it would make me worse for not just a day, but a few days where I was just didn't really have the energy to really talk to anyone, want to interact with anyone. I just wanted to stay in my quiet little hole and be left alone, which is not a good way to live. So I started searching and I've discovered, there are many other modalities out there other than talk therapy. I did try the EFT route, but EFT, if there were any measurable changes, they were very small. So started doing more digging, and I discovered two people. One guy was named Robert, no, Dr. Larry Nims, and he kind of created a technique called BSFF, Be Set Free Fast. And that worked directly with the subconscious. And I was like, that sounds amazing because, that's where my issues are.
Yeah.
And he promised, really, really fast, expedited healing. But the problem was I think he was dying of cancer at the time, so he's no longer doing sessions. I
Mm.
found another guy named Robert Smith who worked with him and kind of actually created his own modality off of the learnings and understandings that Dr. Larry Nims developed. And his technique, he calls eutaptics. But at the end of the day, it's all memory reconsolidation. But he was giving sessions, and I, booked a session. And within one session, experienced profound changes. And then I went back for a second one, and he had cleaned up that murder suicide within my head so that it was no longer bothering me. And he
Mm.
soon started a school, and so I joined that school and became a practitioner. And I've been working with people ever since. I had to know how he did it, and and learning how he did it, because I have other stuff just like everyone else on this planet. That wasn't the only thing that I had stored in my head, but it was the biggest one. And learning how to do it, continued to work on myself, and then started working with other people, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Wow, that's crazy. I mean, just to think too, where would your life be had you not just like tried to find a different modality instead of just be like, I see so many clients really that have done talk therapy for decades
Yep.
and it's not really working.
Yeah,
Or
and
maybe they think it is, or it's more of a friendly relationship and but
that's an issue that I hear a lot. They basically become friends, and they want to continue this friendship with people. But I actually understand the science of why talk therapy doesn't work now. And the science of why it doesn't work is how I'm able to, is actually the same science that I use for my work. Um, we can get into that or we can save that. I don't know what your audience wants to listen to.
Because I think, we were chatting a little bit before, right? You do this, neuroscience kind of brain retraining, and I do this bioresonance, quantum physics stuff. And it's very difficult to sometimes bridge this, science world, energy world, and brain world to make it accessible to people to believe a little bit in it. We know, we've seen the impact. But, I would love to get into a little bit more of the nerdiness of all of
Yeah.
this and the science on why this works, maybe a little bit more on like what it is, how you take a client through it, and then maybe a little bit more on the science.
Okay. Well, it's kind of actually hard to talk about one without the other.
That's fine.
Um, every time you recall a memory, the neurons associated with that memory become malleable. They become available to be changed because your brain releases chemicals to make the proteins responsible for holding those neurons intact. Releases chemicals that makes them changeable, and it's what enables you to learn. We learn because our brain was made to be able to adapt. So when you recall a memory, the neurons say, okay, what's the new information? What's the new information we have today? But if you don't put anything new in its place, of course, nothing's going to change. So if you light up all those neurons and you recall all the pain, all the hardship, all the trauma, and then you just talk about it and you don't introduce anything new, well, of course, those neurons are not going to change, and you're going to still have the same issue that you had when you went in. Talk therapy can be productive. I'm not here to shoot it down, but you have to be very purposeful, and you have to be very mindful of the new ideas and new understandings you're trying to instill in the client. But if that's not done, and you just listen, nothing's going to change. With my modality, we have the person light up that memory, meaning I don't want them to run away from it. I want them to feel it, and I want them to make it bother them as much as they possibly can. Because when they do that, all of the neurons associated with that memory become available to be changed, like I've been saying. And so I have them light up that memory, and then we immediately redirect their focus and attention to something else. And by doing that, we're gradually updating the neurons associated with holding on to that pain. And so I have them go in and then I pull them out. And I do that repeatedly. And, we call it subjective units of distress, SUDS. I'll be monitoring their SUDS throughout. And they will notice, and I will notice that, the SUDS will quickly go down by doing this redirected focus technique, because we're taking advantage of that memory reconsolidation window and we're putting new information in.
Hmm. So interesting. Um, but that does make sense a lot too on why talk therapy. A lot of times it's just like bringing it up, but then
Hmm.
reprocessing or retraining, for lack of better words. Um, so do clients normally come to you with a specific memory or problem per se, or is it more like maybe they're experiencing conditions feeling kind of off? Like how do people typically get introduced to this?
There are two types of people that I'll get. Sometimes people come to me and they have issues and they want to get rid of those issues and they don't really understand why. And then there are people that come to me that have severe trauma. They're like, I need this trauma out of my head.
Mm,
And so I work with both types of people. The people that just have severe trauma, while it may be, crippling to them, are actually kind of the easiest people to work with
yeah.
because it's one target. But the people that have many memories that support an issue, but usually they don't understand that their issue is memory based. And
Mm,
so, like for instance, a woman came to me and she was like, I don't understand why I'm a people pleaser. I want to stop being a people pleaser.
mm,
Like, okay. And I've worked with people for a while now, and I said, or I asked her, did mom and dad pay attention to you? And she was like, no. She looked like I'd slapped her in the face. First question, it got right to the heart of the matter. But that's pretty typical, for people that are people pleasers, and so that was an easy one. But that one, while not as life changing as maybe being seeing a murder or being raped or whatnot, is actually can take a little longer because we have to say, okay, well, what were all the times that mom and dad, like, name me 5 times where you feel like you were deserving of mom and dad's attention, but you didn't get it, and they just kind of brushed you off. And so, like, oh, I've got this instance, I've got this instance, like they could go on for days. But the thing though is that we'll choose maybe 5, maybe a little bit more, and we'll work on those. What we have to recognize is that people operate via trance states, and it's the memories that contribute to the creation of those trance states. But at the end of the day, it's a trance state. And so if I break the biggest 5 memories that have contributed to them, not feeling wanted, not feeling loved, and we flip the script, we make it so that one, it no longer bothers them, and then we change the story. Well, those 5 memories are going to flip the script on their trance state. And so they're going to start acting differently almost immediately. So there are some interesting things that happen when you work with people. But when we work with people, we want to just kind of identify the big ones. And we'll go after the big ones first. And that will generally change a person's behavior.
And you mentioned just like changes after, things that happen after a session. I come from the health world, right? So I know when people process trauma, are able to move through it, their health conditions dissipate. Sometimes totally going away, getting better. I know that's not necessarily your focus, but do you hear people saying, oh, well, I actually I have more energy again. My stomach issues, suddenly have gone away, like things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And many, many examples of that. When you remove stress from a person's mind, the body often follows. So
Yep.
where the mind goes, the body follows.
Yep.
And for instance, I was working with a guy. Uh, he originally came to me because he had a lot of money trauma. But underneath all that money trauma was also relationship issues.
Mm.
And during our work together, he's an old guy. He's actually pushing 80, and he was getting ultrasounds and whatnot, and they discovered some lumps on his some growths on his nodes, I should say, on his lungs,
Mm.
and we there's some oddness to my work,
Yeah.
and sometimes I'll refer to metaphysical literature.
Hmm.
Uh, well, the big one is Metaphysical Anatomy by Yvette Rose, and we looked up, what could possibly be causing this node on his lung,
Yeah.
and it was relationship issues. It was not feeling free,
Yep.
feeling confined, and so we really ramped up our work on that and got the mind into a better place. And guess what happened to the nodes? The nodes just disappeared. Um, Coincidence? Maybe, but I've seen coincidences like that often.
Oh, yes.
Um, when you start working with the most powerful part about you, things are going to happen. And so when you clean up the mind, the body often follows.
Yep. 100%. I s- when I run scans on people, lungs will show up a lot, and it's like, well, I don't have lung issues, but lungs hold grief, right?
Hmm.
And we can see different emotional patterns that show up too. And they're like, well, this doesn't make sense. I'm like, well, the body is telling me this for a reason. The brain has probably created a safety mechanism and turned this almost off so we don't keep reprocessing it. Do you see that a lot too? Where it's like people maybe you know there's more to the story, but they either can't remember it or they push it so much down or aside that it's just they don't think it's an issue.
That's an interesting thing about this line of work, is because at the end of the day, we're just going after neurons. We're going after neurons. And so even if a person doesn't remember the story, but they feel like they have a knowing, we
Mm,
can still work on it. And what I'll often have my clients do is like, okay, well, you think something happened, but you're not sure, you don't remember the details. Make up the worst possible story of what may have happened that night. And when they make up the worst possible story of what may have happened that night, what's happening? Well, the neurons that are telling them we have an issue, something's wrong, are the very ones that are going to come up with this information. And so when we have them create the worst possible story, and then we change that story and we make it so that it doesn't bother them anymore. When we do that, even though like in their head they just created something, and we're working on a fictional story, we're still targeting the same neurons, and so they're still getting healing even when they don't have a knowing of what happened. This is really good for people that suspect that they may have been raped when they were kids. Uh, it's done profound healing for them.
mm.
You can do interesting things with this modality, and very unconventional, but still effective, and it works. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like sometimes we need to go a little more unconventional. Not that conventional can't work, but I feel like so often people hit roadblocks and only get so far.
Consciousness is so mysterious and unusual that to confine it to traditional therapies is not doing it justice. We have to go after the ethereal sometimes and go after, you know, the very unusual and the very strange in order to get to the heart of the matter. And just because, it's untraditional, it's non-traditional, doesn't mean that it's not going to work. And I think that's kind of one of the roadblocks that I have in communicating to people. It's like, well, I've gone to therapy and I've gone to psychiatrists and I changed my diet and I'm working out and I'm meditating. It's like, okay, that's good, and that all of those things are good for you. But you still have this wrench in your head. Let's see if we can get it out of there, and you can do that with this modality of memory reconsolidation.
Yeah, I have that conversation like daily with people. It's like, well, you've done all the things and they're great. And there's layers deeper that we can go.
Yeah,
And
and that type of behavior in itself can also be running away from the issue, because sometimes like when people, it's like, well, I'm doing Wim Hof, I'm doing the ice baths, and I'm doing the breathing, and I'm running every day, and I'm working out, and I'm meditating. It's like, okay, maybe that's also just running away. Like some people, they overeat. Some people, they scroll social media, and some people unfortunately do drugs and all that. Sometimes this, positive behavior can in itself be running away from the real issue.
that's a hard one to bring up to client because we work, in close proximity with our clients and, they're like, well, I can't meditate. I'm like, okay, well, you can. It's just we have to learn that the brain is safe in meditation, but that's a different
Right.
story. I journal all the time, I'm journaling. Okay, but are we keeping that same loop, or are we just doing it because it's comfortable, right? Or I work out is a huge one, right? And it's like, that's my stress. That's how I let go of stress. I'm like, well, you know,
Yeah.
that is in essence, sometimes it might help a little bit, especially when you get that like, spike of, dopamine and
Yep.
that feels good to the brain, but it's like
Yeah.
it's not actually processing what's keeping us in this stuck, limbic loop, for lack of better words, right?
And sometimes when people take up journaling or saying affirmations, it creates a fear response in itself, because when do they do it? Only when they feel the edge coming on. You know?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's something I talk about too. It's like even with tapping, I love EFT for clients, but I'm like, don't only do it when you're anxious, because then your brain thinks I can only respond to this when I am in this state. Same
Mhm.
with journaling. I'm a big journal fan. I'm a big affirmations fan. Like they can work Right. But we're also talking about different things. Journaling and affirmations is one thing. Processing trauma is another thing, and they do go hand in hand, and they're not synonymous, or they're not, exclusive to one another.
If you want to find things that you need to work on, one of the best things you can do is pick up a Louise Hay book. She wrote really good affirmations. Pick them up, read through them, and see which ones don't feel true.
Yeah.
And the ones that don't feel true, be like, ask yourself, why doesn't this feel true?
Hmm.
And the memories your brain gives you are the ones you need to clean up. You can use affirmations really intelligently if you say, okay, this doesn't feel true. Why doesn't this feel true? You go
Hmm.
clean that up. Your behavior is going to start changing, and your outlook on life is going to start changing.
That's so interesting. Um, what are some other things that people could do outside of maybe, obviously sessions and things like that, like on their own to kind of help maybe remember or start learning that like this is kind of an issue and start retraining a little bit?
So, okay, well, lots of things. Let's start with dreams. Uh, Dreams are very powerful, and what one thing you need to know is, okay, regardless of what perspective you have on life, if you have a nightmare, it's usually just going to be unprocessed emotions. So if you have a nightmare, don't ask yourself why did, I mean, you can ask yourself why you had the nightmare, and it may be very obvious to you. But with this technique, we can just work on the dream. And the brain is going to use the dream symbolically to represent the area of your life you need to work on. And so you can get profound healing just by working on your dreams and the disturbing ones. And you clean those up. It's going to go to the very same. I keep saying this. Go to the very same synaptic highways and clusters of neurons that are kind of saying red alert, red alert, we have an issue here. And so you clean up the dream, it's going to clean up that same area of your mind that has some sort of stored trauma.
Mm.
Other things you can do, like say, big things, like say you're looking for love and you haven't found love. Okay, well, ask yourself, why don't what are some areas in your life where you had bad love experiences? Say you're having issues with money. Think about all the times you felt poor, you were lacking in money, you had trouble paying bills or whatnot. Find all those stories. All these things, like you may not have significant, what I call big T traumas. You may not have ever gone through something that people would turn a movie into, but you have numerous smaller traumas and things that upset you, things that made you feel less than or unloved or whatnot. Find all of those little stories, and those are going to be contributing to your behavior. The worst thing that ever happened to you is the worst thing that ever happened to you. You should never compare your trauma to someone else's. So just ask yourself, like, go to the big things that people are always thinking about in life. Like, who did you lose? Like, were there any significant deaths in your childhood or in your young adult life or even your adult life? You know, any breakups where, you thought he or she was the one and they just left. School memories, oftentimes like, even though, like, I guess, like I said, it's not a big T trauma, but it really affected, who you thought you were, it affected your confidence, maybe your friendships or whatever. Go to school memories that, were not the best experiences. It's really not hard to find things that people think it's going to be hard to find memories to work on. It's really not. Your brain is an answering machine. It answers questions hundreds of thousand times a day. It's like, where did I put my keys? Where did I put my shoes? What should I have for dinner? Your brain answers all those questions immediately. So ask yourself, what are some issues that I need to clean up? Your brain's going to be like, oh, well, how much time do you have? Do you want five or do you want 10,000? How many do you want?
I
But
think we talk about this that they're a big it's trauma isn't always something big, it's how we process things, right? So it's not necessarily what happens as well, it's how our brain perceives it. And so,
Hmm.
you know, I mean, I tell this to clients when I do like emotional reports, and I'm like, this is coming up, and it's like, doesn't mean that something big happened. It could be that somebody pushed you down on that first grade, you know,
Hmm.
playground and told you that you were like, you sucked. It's like,
Yeah.
and that for some reason, the way we process that and we carry that on, right? And so it's sometimes hard um, to realize that something like that can really be playing a role in our life, our health, our mind.
Yeah. All of our experiences control our perception of life. And but the biggest things that control our perception are the people that raise us.
Yeah.
You know, our brains are built to be one, adaptable, but also tribal. And so in order to fit into the tribe, you gotta act like them, you gotta talk like them, you gotta walk like them. And and if you don't, you could get kicked out of the tribe. And what would happen in the past if you got kicked out of the tribe? You die. You can't survive on your own in this world. You need people around you. And it's actually one of the reasons why public speaking is the number one fear. Is
Mm.
because if you had to get in front of your tribe and explain yourself, you were probably on the chopping block.
Mhm.
And so you knew, like, oh, things might get bad. I have to explain myself, and I've got to explain myself well. I've got to look calm, confident, in control. And oh my God, it's almost impossible to do that right now because I'm about to possibly die, you know. And but the brain is built to be tribal, and because of this, we tend to act like our parents and our siblings and our family, even if we know logically that their behavior is not beneficial, we'll still do it anyway. You know, classic example is, well, Dad got home from work, he would have a shot of scotch and two or three cigarettes, in the living room. Well, what do they do as soon as they turn 21 and they get home from work? Well, they have a shot of scotch and two or three cigarettes, because that's what you do. And it's also, you know, unfortunately, the reason why people often have painful um, romances. Say mom and dad didn't show them or give them the love that they needed. They'll often end up with people that are unloving and dismissive because it's what the brain knows. It's like it's what the brain associates with love, even if it's not the ideal form of love. And so people will often end up with people that are just like mom, just like dad, and just as rude as dad, just as dismissive as mom. And the cycle just continues to carry forward until you break the cycle.
Yeah, so true. This work is can be so much deeper than just us. When you talk about cycle breaking, I talk about this with clients. It's like you're breaking generations
Hmm.
of trauma, of healing. It's obviously it's for you too, and it can only be for you, and that's okay too. But it's powerful in how you impact your family.
Yeah.
Your work, your career. That's a big one too. So,
Yep.
this work is amazing. So I love that you're doing it, such a different modality.
Yeah. Generational cycle breaking can be some of the most transformative experiences for people. And often, I think, not to get spiritual, but I think oftentimes it's sometimes why we come here is to break the cycle. It's like this is my job. I have to change the story, and I'm going to do it hell or high water. And like you just said, you can do it through a variety of means. And just the important thing is you do the work, and it's very rewarding for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If people wanted to learn a little bit more about what you do, book a session, understand more about this work, where can they find a little bit more information?
You can go to healingmindshift.com. I have a lot of content on there. I have a long page that explains the science behind it. We kind of talked about in the beginning about explain the science behind memory reconsolidation, I explain the process, what you can expect. There's testimonials on there. You can also go to my Instagram. I'm technically on YouTube, but I'm more active on Instagram. You can just find me by looking up Healing Mind Shift. Yeah.
Yeah, I will definitely put his information down in the show notes, guys. So if you want to check him out, please do so. I think his work is really powerful and could be the thing that you guys are looking for. So, Patrick, thank you for spending some of your morning chatting with me here. And thank you, listeners, of course, for being here. Definitely send this to somebody if you know that it would help them. And leave a review, of course, if you find that this is helpful as well. But otherwise, Patrick, thank you. We will catch you guys on the next show.
Thank you for having me.